I was just there recently, or by there recently, and there's no breweries there anymore as well. But back then, about one brewery a week was closing in Germany. So there were lots of these copper brew houses available. And they had a much better tradition of having local breweries, so there was a lot of great equipment to choose from. So we bought this nice little brew house, shipped it over to Chico. It sat here over in front of where the Casa Lupe, where Casa Ramos is today, for a little while. We eventually moved it over to right by you, Myers Street, and stored it in somebody's yard. As I tried to raise money to install it, and at that point in time, we'd been in business a few years, and I thought the banks would loan us money. None of them would. I went to visit venture funds, and a couple of them might have, but they wanted 51% of our business. And so we actually put the expansion project on hold for quite a few years, and I started to add fermenters. The last shot showed 6 tanks. Now I've got 10. I put a second layer in this little room, and that hole through the wall, that was our warehouse where the cases were stored in an earlier picture. We had some 60-barrel tanks and started just to brew around the clock and 7 days a week and figure out how to make more and more beer. The demand was there, and we had to sell more beer to raise money so we could finally install the equipment. So I'm going to skip about 25 years. Here we are today. Little overhead shot, so we now, I'll cover some. The brewery now is on about 15 acres, and I mentioned our t-shirt warehouse is 9,000 feet or something. It's 3 times the size of my original brewery. Some of the stuff that we're doing, though, that's fun is we're raising some hops next door, and this part of California used to be a hop growing region. From here up into the Sacramento Valley, down by Sacramento, up into Slough House, up in the foothills, over into Sonoma, Hopland, and Hopland was a big hop growing region. There's still hop kilns, old hop kiln buildings up in the wine country. So a lot of hops used to be grown in California. Unfortunately, the price of land here in California is so great, and the yields that you get on an acre of hops really doesn't justify growing hops in California. So there's no real commercial ventures. There's some new ones that are thinking they're going to be a viable business growing 10 or 20 acres of hops in California. But in reality, the yields are about almost half of what you get up in the Northwest. The property around Yakima is pretty ideal for growing hops, so a lot of our hops come out of Yakima. And that same latitude around the world, so we buy hops from Czechoslovakia and from Germany and from New Zealand. Our Southern Hemisphere harvest, the hops are grown in New Zealand. So that one latitude, a little further north than us here around the world, is where most of the hops are found. The length of day does increase the yields quite a bit. But we've got this little field here in order for people to see what hops are like. So this is from our estate, and we do brew beer with our own growing barley. We have a barley field. This is off of on our property, which we have off of Hagen Lane. We have another facility over there where we bring our malted barley in by rail. And we've got about 30 acres or so of barley, organic barley growing over there. And so we've been doing that the last few years, making an all-estate, organic estate here, which we think we have the only one in the world. Or at least one of the only one we're not aware of anyone else. I hate to make claims that we're the only one, because there may be somebody else out there. It's something that we've done in the last few years. It's been a lot of fun for us. Michael had been talking a bit about our garden. So we've got a garden out here. We've got now 2 acres of garden behind the brewery, and we're trying to raise a bit of our own produce for the restaurant. And we put in I stuck a shot in of a composting system we have. We take all of our restaurant scraps and they go into an enclosed composting system that naturally the composting activity heats it up to 150 degrees, and it produces great looking compost in about 12 days from putting in food scraps. It comes out looking like a great compost you buy. This is what the unit looks like. We take over a ton a day of input material, so we feed it a lot of all of our food scraps go into it. As well as bits of hops and malt and things that we have from our process. I mentioned I started out with a 10-barrel brewery. We've got a 10-barrel brewery again right behind here. We've got a little research brewery, and so some of the beers that we've been developing over the years come out of this little research brewery. So we've got a separate staff there that brews, and we do beer camp. I think there's some beer campers here.
Yeah.
From San Francisco, I think San Francisco Beer Week, right? Isn't that where most of you, who were up here? We've been doing something last few years called Beer Camp, where we bring people from all walks of life. We've had some local Chico people, we've had some consumers from the country, we've had brewers and retailers and wholesalers and a variety of beer riders and whatnot. Come here and spend a few days and learn about how we brew beer and what goes in the beer. And they get to develop their own recipe. They get to come up with a label design. Our graphics department works with them on a label design. We brew the beer, we age the beer, we package it for them, and we ship it back to their hometown. And they get to serve it, either if you're a bar owner, you can serve it in your own bar, or if you're just a patron, you might get to talk with your local bars in the serving the beer. So these guys happen to be up here today, so glad to have you be able to show up tonight.
Thank you.
Our research brewer here, and he got here at 4 a.m. I think to they wanted to do a little bit of a sourdough on their beer, and they had a heck of a day. But yeah, hopefully it will work out to be a very interesting beer. This is what the little aging cellar looks like at the Pilot Brewery. So we mimic what we're doing here on a small scale. So we've got 20 barrel and 40 barrel tanks. So I'm again able to do stuff on a small scale. As we grew, that was one of the things that we really wanted to be able to continue to do. Now the torpedo slide shows up. So this has nothing to do with the beer. I was with my son in Hawaii, and we were talking about developing this beer. And we were scuba divers, and the company is called Torpedo Divers, and they had these torpedoes. So we thought, perfect shot. These are the torpedoes. So these vessels are packed full of hops, and they allow us to do a dry hopping and aging process where the beer, sort of like a tea bag, beer gets pumped slowly through the bed of hops and imparts a lot of aroma and different characteristics than you get by boiling it down. So the torpedo beer we just had is made through this process where we, for several days, about 5 days, circulate the beer through the fresh bed of hops in the torpedo. And timing, the beers we're going to drink next actually came from this group. So the last thing we're going to be sampling tonight is a range of sort of anniversary beers, our 30th anniversary tribute to the folks who helped get the whole industry kicked off. And I talked about Fritz Maytag and Anchor, and I talked about Jack McAuliffe, who's off on your right there. He was photoshopped in. He's the only one. The other folks, we were all together at the San Francisco Anchor Brewery, and we got together and spent a day, and filmed it, and talked about sort of what the industry was like 30 years ago. But Jack had been in a pretty bad car accident, and he couldn't make it out at that time. He did come to the brewery here when we brewed the batch of beer. Fred Eckhart is the one to the left of Jack there. He was the one who wrote that first homebrewing book that I got. And then Charlie Papazian is on your left. And Charlie was the one who wrote the first, actually founded the American Homebrewers Association, and wrote also a very early edition of a homebrewing book. So these guys were really some of the early pioneers to help get the craft brewing movement started. So I wanted to pay tribute to them. And I approached all of them and asked if we could brew a beer together. And so what we're going to taste next is going to be a beer from each of these collaborations. The two home brewers, Charlie and Fred Eckhart, came together on a beer together. So there's 3 beers, and then the 4th beer in the series is one that we brewed here ourselves, a Grand Cru we call it, where we aged some Bigfoot in oak barrels and bourbon barrels and whiskey barrels, and blended it with some special celebration ale we brewed this year and some pale ale. So it's a unique blend of beers that got us to where we are today. All 4 of them are on the table. Looks like how they're doing it. So as far as styles, I would start with the way we released them, and you'll get Fritz's and my stout would be the first one. And when I asked Fritz to brew this beer with me, I've known him since before I got in the brewing business. We both talked about what beer sort of was meaningful back in the early days. And he had remembered buying a stout and drinking a stout at a local bar, local restaurant, before he even started brewing beer. And so it was something that was very memorable, and he was hoping someday his beer would be as good as the stouts he was buying in those days. And as you saw, my very first batch of beer was a stout. So that was what was meaningful. So sample the stout. You're going to be pouring your own, it looks like. And again, these are all like close to 10%, so be cautious.
4 bottles to each table, and what if there's only 2 people at a table like that?
I'll take questions.